During the Second World War, few American commanders inspired as much admiration and controversy as General George S. Patton. Known for his aggressive tactics, fiery speeches, and relentless pursuit of victory, Patton became one of the most recognizable military leaders of the Allied forces. Soldiers viewed him as fearless, while politicians often saw him as dangerously unpredictable. By 1944, as Allied forces prepared for the liberation of Europe, many believed Patton was destined for the highest battlefield authority, Supreme Commander of Allied forces. His rapid victories in North Africa and Sicily proved his operational brilliance. Yet, despite his success and popularity among troops, Patton was unexpectedly denied this ultimate command. Behind the official explanations lay a complicated story involving politics, personality clashes, strategic disagreements, and costly battlefield consequences. Tens of thousands of soldiers would ultimately pay the price for decisions made far from the front lines. Understanding why Patton was denied supreme command reveals not only the nature of Allied leadership, but also the delicate balance between military genius and political control during wartime. The decision would shape the course of the European campaign and influence how the war unfolded in its most critical phase. George Patton's rise began long before World War II erupted. A student of military history and a believer in offensive warfare, Patton trained relentlessly for modern mechanized combat. During World War I, he helped pioneer American tank warfare, gaining first-hand experience that shaped his future doctrine. By the time World War II began, Patton was already convinced that speed and aggression would dominate future battlefields. His opportunity came during Operation Torch in North Africa, where American forces initially struggled against experienced German troops. Patton transformed poorly performing units into disciplined fighting forces almost overnight. Strict discipline, demanding training, and personal leadership at the front lines, he restored confidence to American troops shaken by early defeats. His victories demonstrated a commander capable of rapid adaptation and decisive action. Military observers praised his ability to exploit enemy weaknesses faster than opposing generals could react. These early successes elevated Patton's reputation among Allied commanders and made him a symbol of American offensive power. However, his bold personality also created tension with political leaders who worried that brilliance on the battlefield did not always translate into diplomatic reliability. The invasion of Sicily in 1943 showcased both Patton's genius and the controversies that would haunt his career. Initially assigned a supporting role under British General Bernard Montgomery, Patton quickly turned a secondary mission into a dramatic offensive campaign. His forces raced across the island, capturing key cities and ultimately reaching Palermo before advancing toward Messina. Patton's rapid advance embarrassed rival commanders and captured headlines back home. American newspapers portrayed him as the hero of Sicily, strengthening his public image, yet behind the victories lay growing problems. Patton's rivalry with Montgomery intensified Allied tensions, and his impulsive decisions sometimes ignored broader coalition strategy. The situation worsened when reports emerged that Patton had slapped soldiers suffering from combat exhaustion, accusing them of cowardice. The incidents shocked American leadership and caused public outrage when revealed. Although many soldiers still admired him, political leaders began questioning whether such a volatile figure could represent Allied unity at the highest level of command. Sicily became the turning point where Patton's military brilliance collided with political reality, planting the seeds for the decision that would later deny him supreme authority. While Patton publicly apologized for striking exhausted soldiers, the damage to his reputation within Allied leadership circles was profound. Generals could forgive aggressive behavior in combat, but political leaders feared public scandals that might weaken morale or Allied cooperation. Supreme command required diplomacy, patience, and emotional restraint, qualities many believed Patton lacked. President Franklin Roosevelt and General Dwight D. Eisenhower faced immense pressure to maintain unity among American, British, and other Allied forces. Patton's unpredictable temperament threatened that balance. Although Eisenhower personally valued Patton's battlefield skill, he worried that promoting him to supreme command could trigger political backlash or international conflict with British leadership. The incident created lasting doubt about Patton's judgment under stress. Even years later, senior officials referenced the episode as evidence that Patton might endanger coalition stability. In wartime leadership, perception often mattered as much as performance. The slapping incidents became a permanent mark against Patton's record, quietly influencing decisions long after the public controversy faded. Dwight D. Eisenhower represented the opposite leadership philosophy from Patton. Calm, diplomatic, and politically aware, Eisenhower excelled at managing alliances rather than commanding individual battles. His greatest strength was coordination, keeping British, American, Canadian, and Free French forces working toward common goals despite competing national intilt. Arrests. Supreme command required negotiation as much as strategy. Eisenhower spent countless hours resolving disagreements between strong personalities like Montgomery, Bradley, and Patton himself. Allied leaders believed victory depended on unity rather than individual brilliance. While Patton thrived in fast-moving armored warfare, Eisenhower thrived in consensus building. Political leaders trusted Eisenhower to balance military objectives with diplomatic necessities. Choosing Eisenhower over Patton reflected a strategic belief. World War II in Europe was not merely a military campaign, but an international coalition effort. Patton's aggressive independence, once considered an advantage, now appeared risky at the highest command level. As planning for D-Day intensified, Allied leaders faced the most important command decision of the war. Operation Overlord required precise coordinations of naval, air, and ground forces across multiple nations. Any failure could prolong the war for years. Many officers privately acknowledged that Patton was among the most capable field commanders available. However, Supreme Command demanded political trust above all else. Eisenhower's appointment ensured stability and cooperation among Allied governments. Ironically, Patton was still considered too valuable to ignore. Instead of leading the invasion, he was assigned a deceptive role in Operation Fortitude, convincing German intelligence that the main invasion would occur at Pas-de-Calais. German commanders feared Patton so much that they believed the deception. Though denied supreme command, Patton's reputation became a weapon itself, one that helped ensure D-Day success. Some historians argue that denying Patton's supreme authority slowed Allied momentum in Europe. Eisenhower favored broad-front advances, spreading forces across multiple directions rather than launching a single decisive thrust into Germany. Patton advocated rapid penetration deep into enemy territory, believing speed would collapse German resistance faster. Critics claim cautious strategies prolonged fighting and increased casualties. By late 1944, Allied forces faced stiff resistance along fortified German defenses. The slower advance allowed German forces time to regroup, reinforcing positions that might otherwise have collapsed. Supporters of Patton later argued that aggressive leadership might have shortened the war significantly. Whether this claim is accurate remains debated, but the perception grew that strategic caution carried a human cost measured in thousands of lives. The phrase, 80,000 soldiers paid the price, reflects the enormous casualties suffered during prolonged campaigns in Western Europe. Battles such as the Hürtgen Forest and prolonged fighting along the Siegfried Line resulted in heavy losses for limited territorial gain. Soldiers endured brutal weather, dense forests, and determined German defenses. Critics later questioned whether alternative strategies could have avoided such costly engagements. Patton himself criticized slow advances, arguing that concentrated armored assaults could bypass strongpoints instead of attacking them directly. While no single decision caused these casualties, debates over command philosophy intensified after the war. The losses became symbolic of the broader question: did Allied caution save lives in the long run, or did it extend suffering unnecessarily? In December 1944, Germany launched a surprise counter-offensive known as the Battle of the Bulge. Allied lines collapsed under sudden pressure, and the situation became critical. Patton demonstrated extraordinary operational flexibility by rapidly turning his Third Army north to relieve surrounded American forces at Bastogne. His maneuver astonished Allied commanders and bade his mastery of rapid warfare, Within days, Patton transformed a desperate situation into a stabilized front. The success reinforced arguments that his aggressive instincts were often correct. Even Eisenhower acknowledged Patton's brilliance during the crisis. Yet, despite this triumph, the earlier decision regarding supreme command remained unchanged. Wartime leadership extended beyond battlefields into political realities. Allied governments feared any commander whose personality might disrupt cooperation. Britain, in particular, valued predictable leadership after years of war strain. Patton's outspoken criticism of allies and tendency toward controversial remarks worried diplomats. Supreme command required maintaining trust among nations with different priorities and egos. Political leaders ultimately concluded that stability outweighed tactical brilliance. The choice reflected a broader principle. Wars between alliances are won through cooperation, not individual dominance. Patton never openly rebelled against his superiors, but his frustration was clear. He believed aggressive action could end wars faster and save lives overall. Letters and diary entries reveal a commander convinced that opportunities were being missed. He viewed delays as dangerous, allowing enemies time to recover. Yet Patton also understood military hierarchy and continued executing orders effectively. His loyalty to the mission never wavered, even when personal ambition was denied. The debate surrounding Patton highlights a timeless leadership dilemma. Should organizations prioritize brilliance or reliability? Patton represented innovation, speed, and risk-taking. Eisenhower represented balance, patience, and diplomacy. Both qualities proved essential to Allied victory. The denial of supreme command was less a rejection of Patton's ability and more a recognition of the war's political complexity. Historians remain divided over whether Patton should have led Allied forces. Some argue his aggressive strategies might have reached Berlin earlier, potentially reshaping post-war Europe. Others believe coalition unity would have collapsed under his leadership style. Modern military scholars study the decision as an example of civil-military balance, where political goals ultimately guide military command. Despite never becoming supreme commander, Patton's legacy endured. Sired, his Third Army liberated vast territories, rescued Allied forces, and contributed significantly to Germany's defeat. Soldiers remembered him as a leader who shared danger and demanded excellence. His speeches, controversial yet motivating, became legendary. Patton embodied the warrior spirit of World War II, fearless, flawed, and unconfettable. In the end, Patton was denied supreme command, not because he lacked skill, but because World War II required more than battlefield genius. Allied victory depended on unity among nations, political stability, and controlled leadership. Eisenhower symbolized cooperation, while Patton symbolized decisive warfighting. The choice reflected strategic necessity rather than personal failure. Yet the debate persists. If Patton had led the Allied forces, would fewer soldiers have died, or would the alliance itself have fractured? History offers no definitive answer, only the reminder that leadership decisions in war carry consequences measured not only in victory, but in human lives.